The first question that I want you to recognize today is, what does this whole concept of church mean? What does it mean? What is the meaning? What is the definition of church? Ecclesia or ecclesia. Ecclesia is simply an assembly of people. And it's really coined by the Greeks. They use it to define the gathering of the parliamentarians. Politicians will be called the ecclesia. Historians argue that this whole concept of ecclesia, the called out of God, is simply the same thing, a gathering of believers. There's some who wrestle with, no, it's not just a gathering, it's a called out, it's a separation. I tend to believe, no, it's not a separation in terms of separating ourselves from the unbelievers in our planet, in our nation, in our community. It's not that kind of separation. It's a separation of lifestyles. It's a separation of how we live. It's not a separation from them. They need us. Without us, they would have no salt. They'll have no ability to be preserved. So the church is called to not just be separate with our lifestyle, but to assemble. We're called to be ones who assemble. You know, Jesus makes this statement in John 17 and 15. He says, I'm praying to the Father. Not that the Father will take you out of the world, but the Father will keep you from the wicked one which is in this world. There's a wicked spirit in the planet, the spirit of Antichrist. When Paul in his writings, he says the Antichrist spirit has already appeared. The Antichrist himself hasn't, but Paul talks about the spirit of the Antichrist. What's the spirit of the Antichrist? The spirit of the Antichrist with venom declares that Jesus is not God. I don't know why y'all serving that white God, blue-eyed, blonde-haired God. Jesus ain't no God. That's a religion of slaves. No, that's the spirit of Antichrist. It's an Antichrist spirit that denies Christ is God. And you will hear that more and more and more as the time collapses for eternity to begin for us. You will hear people denying the faith. You will hear people walking away from God. You hear people saying stuff like, I ain't going to church. All they want is your money. I'm not going. Stay home. Thank God for this COVID. I ain't got to go. And when COVID over, I still ain't going. Bring it down a couple of octaves. This is a spirit of Antichrist. This is a spirit that is infiltrating the minds of so many people. This spirit is going to get more infectious as time go on. There are people who you are friends with now who are believers. In a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, you see them again and they'll have a different kind of gab on. Their speech will be different. Their communication will be different. And you remember you and them sitting next to each other in the church house, and all of a sudden you find them in a different kind of house because the spirit of an Antichrist is in the earth. That's what we are contending with. When Jesus talks about this evil that's in the world, he's not just talking about Satan. Satan is one entity. Satan is one entity. Satan is not omnipresent. He's not omniscient. He don't know everything, and he can't be every place at the same time. He's one embodied angel. The spirit of Antichrist goes throughout our social media. There are persons who pull down the church at will. Talk bad about us as preachers, as spiritual leaders. Granted, some of what they say is truth. Jesus make a statement about telling the truth about somebody else. Jesus' conclusion was this: don't judge another man's servant. Since that preacher don't work for you, shut your mouth. Let the person he worked for, the entity he worked for, which happened to be God, let God deal with that man, let God deal with that woman. You find that people, they find joy in pulling down spiritual leaders. And you think they're pulling them down just because they did wrong, they need to be pulled down. No, they're pulling them down because the spirit of the Antichrist is operating behind them, because it's not just that person they're pulling down. They're trying to pull down the structure of God. They're trying to pull down the need for someone to be able to teach you the word.